Watch this.
Cutting the fat of federal spending is fiscally responsible. But when recent reductions reach what some consider the third rail, our veterans, responsible could be considered unreasonable. That's the story for one Idaho vet. From St. Peter's Square to St. John's Cathedral in Boise, emotions were high as Catholics around the world welcomed the first ever American Pope. We know there are plans for Boise's most iconic hill, but did you know there were once other plans for the former home of Idaho's Potato King? We peel back the history of the Simplot house. Well, we've tried to keep up with the impacts of federal cuts as they pertain to Idaho. Forest Service employees laid off, grant funding for nonprofits canceled, education programs for kids just ended. And whether or not you agree with the Trump administration's why, that is to dig into the national debt, many are having a problem with the how or the where. For example, an Idaho veteran whose job is to help other vets now finds himself at odds with the Veterans Administration over a claim he's been overpaid. Joe Paris has his story.
Some people have a job they do because you got to have a job, right? Others have a purpose, a passion for it.
I'm an LPN.
People like Mike Taylor.
And I am the staff nurse and clinical associate at the Salmon CBOC for the VA.
Mike spent time in other careers in the Boise area, but found himself moving back home to Salmon, Idaho, after a chance encounter at the Boise VA.
Well, there's that big rock out there. It's just, the price of freedom is visible here. And I called my wife on the phone and said, I'm going to go to school, be a nurse, and I want to work for the VA.
He did just that, following a passion for helping veterans.
When they come in for their first initial appointment, I'm on, hey, what branch were you in? What did you do? Where were you at? Did you go on any deployments?
Mike Taylor understands it.
I am.
He's a veteran himself.
3 years active duty. I was in the 25th Infantry Division, Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. I was infantryman.
Helping veterans in the Salmon and Lemhi County region brings meaning to Mike. It also does help pay the bills. But that second part is now in question. He got a strange letter back in March.
And found that they had reduced my pay by 24%.
The letter and explanation came from what is essentially the corporate level HR department for the VA. And they had news for Mike.
I had been overpaid since December 18th of 2022. And that because I had been overpaid, I had accrued a debt, and they were going to start garnishing that from my wages at 15% per pay period.
This is something he had never heard of, working there for a decade plus. Long story short, Mike was told, based on a years-old survey, that his position in Salmon wasn't eligible for an incentivized VA pay rate meant to do things like address healthcare staffing in small, rural areas.
And that's HR's excuse for, they'd say, well, you're in Lemhi County, and it was not part of the survey, so that pay scale doesn't apply to you.
So if you live in a rural area, you're not even, technically, you're not even eligible to have, this extra payment for being certified in your field and being proficient at what you do?
That's I guess, their point.
The sudden pay cut and garnishing of wages going forward because of an alleged overpayment was pretty shocking to anyone Mike reached out to at the Boise VA, looking for help. And leaders, they tried to do that, escalating the implications of the letter for a fix.
They basically came back to me and said, we've taken this all the way up to the VISN 20 director, and she said no.
So while Mike continues to look for any options moving forward, he lives with a very uncertain reality, tough decisions to be made.
Which bills I'm going to pay and which ones I'm just going to have to let go.
Still, he goes to work every day to help other veterans that have returned the favor. A donation campaign created online to help him pay the bills.
Everybody's trying to help me, but the ball just doesn't seem to be moving anywhere. The implications of this entire situation are going to affect me through the rest of my life.
So he is working to get help from our congressional delegation. As we mentioned, there is also a local veterans group that has set up a GoFundMe. He also told me that while trying to make ends meet, his wife, who works as a teacher, is also getting a second job. They're trying to just make enough money to get by, but it is difficult right now. He sees that the explanation of all this is interesting. And Brian, we talk about, the federal cuts. Some of them are on the nose in the sense that it's like, okay, we know this program's being cut from this department.
Yeah.
This one, when I talk to people familiar with the VA system and other things they've seen at the VA, they feel that there is pressure from certain levels, especially at the federal level, to cut budgets or to not raise problems.
Well, is this about cutting budgets, or is this about just recouping some money they feel is overpaid?
In the sense of, they want to dig into the budget line items and see where can we cut costs, because there is such a emphasis right now from the federal level down to make sure that, hey, we're not overpaying anyone. At the same time, though, when you talk to people like Mike and other people I've spoken with at the VA, he's the only one that's being targeted with this. He says he feels like he's being targeted. So it's not a small amount of money either. I mean, it's more than $30,000 that he reportedly has been overpaid. Again, going back a decade, but he's been on the same pay scale the whole time. We're trying to get some clarification from the VA and trying to figure out exactly what happened here. But again, the special pay rate that he was, being paid under for a decade, this is to attract people to smaller clinics and rural areas and underserviced communities to incentivize it. In fact, the city of Boise, at the Boise VA, there's a lot of employees that have that. So when you talk to people at the VA, they don't understand why somebody in Boise would be eligible for that, but someone in Salmon would not.
What has he heard from our congressional delegation?
He has not heard a definite response yet, but he hopes that they will advocate for veterans.
All right, we'll see. All right, thanks, Joe. Well, we have a pope. We saw the white smoke from the Sistine Chapel, and about an hour after that, we saw for the very first time an American step out on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost from Chicago has been elected as the new leader of the Catholic Church, and he will serve as Pope as Leo XIV, the first American pontiff in history, like ever. A historic moment for sure that sparked a celebration right here in Boise, where Aspen Shumpert watched it all play out.
Today symbolizes the continuation of Pope Francis's mission with someone who has the same heart and the same spirit.
White smoke emerged from the Sistine Chapel Thursday, signaling cardinals have chosen the next pope. Thousands that gathered at the Vatican erupted in cheers as the announcement came that Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost would lead the world's 1.3 billion Catholics as Pope Leo XIV.
Ancora conserviamo. Dio ci vuole bene.
Those first words from the new pontiff resonated around the world and here in Boise. The Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist rang its bells and dressed its doors, celebrating the historic selection of the first American pope. A shock to Deacon Scott Pearhill with the Diocese of Boise.
I never expected in my lifetime that we would see an American-born pope. I was thinking it would be Cardinal Parolin, an Italian, the Secretary of State. I was blown away when it was Robert Francis Prevost, born in Chicago. Amazing.
Ariana Collins sat outside the cathedral, emotionally listening to the Pope's first speech.
Pertanto,
I feel very overwhelmed with joy. I'm brought to tears through the experience. He is now the first American-born Pope, and that feels so amazing. I can tell that he has a gentle spirit and a heart for our Lord and for our communities, and that's exactly what you look for in a strong Pope.
Collins wasn't the only one drawn to the cathedral today. Crystal Fackler rushed from home when she heard the news.
I'm ecstatic. I have goosebumps everywhere. It's just wonderful. He was saying that God loves everybody. Bring everyone together and also have some tradition, but also some modern to it too, because we're all growing as a society.
The emotion and excitement wasn't just at the cathedral steps.
In the diocesan chancery office where I work, everybody came running to the TV set, to the monitor, and people had butterflies in their stomachs. When Pope Leo XIV, our new pope, gave his first papal blessing, we all knelt down on the carpeted floor of our office. Even though he was in Italy on the balcony of St. Peter's, we all knelt down for that blessing.
The election of the first American pope has sparked a sense of pride and connection among Idaho's Catholic community.
I think that this is a pivotal experience and it's a historical moment to live through this and to also see our community here in the U.S. have this representation of an American pope.
And a hope for unity.
We're one church, and we are surprisingly unified, but we're also surprisingly vociferous about our different points of view, and maybe having an American pope will help us to be even more unified as we should be.
Pear Hill says the church now looks to the future while honoring its past.
We've been through 9 full days of mourning for our previous beloved Pope, and so we had a chance to grieve. And for many, I think we're still grieving, but I think, I think our new Pope now is a cause for joy for everyone.
Born in Chicago and most recently spent his career ministering in Peru, Pope Leo XIV brings a multilingual background to his role. Pear Hill tells me special masses will be held throughout Idaho in the coming weeks, days to continue on this celebration.
And in the coming months and years, it'll be interesting because he was appointed, if I'm not mistaken, by Pope Francis. So kind of in that vein, possibly, if we'll see the church continue down that path, which Francis was kind of opening the door on some of these issues that many people were like, I don't know, but a lot of people were actually welcoming.
Yeah, and we heard some of the people today that we spoke with feeling that way too, that this is something that might be similar.
All right, thank you very much, Aspen. It was once home to Idaho's richest and most famous businessman. Simplot's house on the hill was supposed to be where Idaho governors would call home. Why it isn't, and what now? Okay, so we can handle the why and the what. It's up to you to help with the who, as in who's going to be part of the 208 conversation. Comments or questions? Just join us by text message. 208-321-5614 is the number. Just don't forget the who, that is your name, and the hashtag the 208.
We'll build a sweet little nest somewhere in the west and let the rest of the world go by.
That is the 1982 view of Simplot Hill with, of course, that is Willie Nelson in the background as well. And the Simplot house, which at the time was just 3 years old when that video was taken. And that was from a KTVB special done on billionaire and potato magnate J.R. Simplot, titled King of the Hill. And atop that hill, which J.R. bought for $5 an acre in 1947, by the way, well, sat that house, as you saw. J.R. called it a shack back in 1982, telling Sal Selesky back then it had everything in it they wanted. J.R. and his wife Esther lived in the 11-room, 7,300 square foot home for 25 years and then donated it to the state of Idaho in 2004. The idea was for the 4,000 Simplot Lane home to become the governor's residence, something Idaho hadn't had since 1989. Then Governor Dirk Kempthorne and the state had plans to renovate the Simplot house. And on this day, 19 years ago, Maggie O'Mara got a sneak peek of those plans and a full view of the state of the state's house from the First Lady herself in today's 208 Redone.
Most of us know it as the big house on Simplot Hill, overlooking all of Boise, but not many of us have been in it. With the help of First Lady Patricia Kempthorne, we got to go inside.
Isn't it gorgeous? The home has a wonderful spirit.
It's been named the Idaho House and will be the official home of the future governors of Idaho. Walking up the grand staircase, you can see the home's best feature, the incredible view.
So here is the view. It's spectacular. When I first came up, it is breathtaking and couldn't describe it. This is Idaho. This is everything from the mountains to the desert, the water, the rivers out there. This is who we are.
It's gorgeous. I've never seen anything like it.
To be able to just get that sort of that feeling, it's really the right place for this house.
Built in the early 80s, J.R. and Esther Simplot lived here until about 3 years ago. What do you think people on the ground are thinking about what's up here?
They just think it's a huge castle or a mansion, and it really is a home more than that.
The 2-bedroom home now stands empty, ready for a major $3 million renovation and expansion to start.
We're going to reconfigure it for the next 100 years.
The plans have already been drawn up. Patricia gave us a sneak peek.
There will be a master suite and 3 other bedrooms, plus then a private suite so that you can have dignitaries. If the president comes back to Idaho, a place where you know there's security, you know that they could stay here.
The private family quarters will be located on the 2nd floor. The main floor will have a grand hall for special functions, leading to a huge terrace overlooking all of Boise.
So that you can open up doors and extend it all out.
Beautiful. There will be a full-service catering kitchen so that future governors will be able to host up to 200 people. Also on the 1st floor, a formal dining room and library for smaller gatherings.
I mean, what a magnificent place to invite people from all over the state to come.
A house that was once off limits will now be a home for the people.
It really is the Idaho house. It belongs to the whole state. There's also this spirit in this house that makes it very much Idaho, very much a home, and I think that'll come through.
Maggie O'Mara, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Except it never did come through. It was kind of cool to see those plans, those ideas they had, but none of it ever came to fruition. The state tried to raise $3 million to renovate the home, but that campaign stalled in 2008 with only about half the money raised. 2008 was also when J.R. Simplot passed away at the age of 99. So the house remained empty and unrenovated. And when the cost to maintain the house and the 37 surrounding acres, the Simplot house was returned to the Simplot family in 2013. Then 3 years later, citing that cost of maintaining an empty home, and because nobody from the Simplot family wanted to live there, they tore it down in January of 2016. The property is still owned by the Simplot Family Foundation. While the house is no longer there, the 150-foot flagpole is, with the 30 by 50-foot American flag still flying. One you could probably see from miles away. You can. And because Simplot Hill has been a go-to spot for sledding over the years, as you see here, well, earlier this year, the Simplot Family Foundation announced it wants to build a 200-acre public park on that spot. And it will be called Jack's Park, after JR's other nickname. And it will include a new trail, or many new trails, a tractor museum, picnic areas, water features, and eventually a hilltop pavilion with panoramic views. It's a 4-phase plan, they say, that's expected to take about 10 to 15 years to complete. And yes, the flag will still be there and will still fly. Okay, so what about an actual Idaho governor's residence? Is that in our future? Because right now, Governor Little, who lives in Emmett, also rents an apartment in Boise and gets a $60,000 housing stipend. Idaho is one of 5 states without a permanent governor's residence, and the idea of establishing one has been floating around since at least 1996, when the legislature created a governor's housing committee. We had that house, as we mentioned, from 1947 until 1989. That would be the Pierce House in Boise's North End on 21st and Irene. And the committee thought, well, they might have the next one in place with that Simplot one, but obviously that didn't pan out. Apparently, the state does own 15 acres of foothills behind Fort Boise with the intent of using it for a governor's house. And, according to Boise State Public Radio, about $200,000 in an account to pay for it. But something tells me they're going to need a bit more than that to do it. Police officers still serving and those who have died in the line of duty were honored for their sacrifice today. And the clock is ticking if you want to vote absentee in the upcoming consolidated election. Here's Jude Binkley with the 411.
It was a somber scene in Meridian this morning as law enforcement from across the region gathered to honor Idaho's fallen officers. The annual Idaho Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony remembers the 77 Idaho officers who gave their lives in the line of duty. The name of each officer was called out before flowers were laid at the base of the memorial in their memory. Organizers say these events give Idahoans an opportunity to honor those who died protecting their community and the officers who put their lives on the line every day. Ada County Sheriff's Deputy Tobin Bolter's name was added to the memorial today. The Boise Police Department says they're seeing an uptick in bike thefts. After recording just 7 thefts total during March and April, police have responded to 7 bike thefts in the first week of May alone. Police recommend using U-locks rather than cable locks, which can easily be cut. Even for quick stops, officers say properly securing your bike is essential. Officers also urge cyclists to register their bikes, making it easier to reunite owners with recovered bikes. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is tomorrow at 5 p.m. You can do that by visiting voteidaho.gov. Make sure your completed ballot is back to your local elections office by 8 p.m. on Election Day, May 20th, whether by mail, in person, or using a drop box. If you want to know what's on your ballot, send us a text and we'll send you a link directly to your phone. Just text the word VOTE to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Jude Binkley.
You know, we had a couple people text in the same thing that Toby sent in today about Mike Taylor, the LPN out of Salmon, Idaho. He said he should get a lawyer. His pay was set by his employer as an offer. He accepted it. Contract results. Deal? Deal. Had a couple of people say that. Meanwhile, this one, Chuck in Boise, our congressional delegation seems to be AWOL. Maybe since they no longer seem to be earning their salary, it should be used to pay for Mike's salary. I'm very excited about the new Pope, says B&B in Nampa. However, I have heard from some that he is, quote, woke and calling him a Marxist. I find this incredibly sad. This is the way that some people are reacting. Sadly, those people are missing the point. God loves us all. Richard wants to know, what's with JR and the tractors? Well, if you've ever been to Jump, which is Jack's urban meeting place downtown, you'll see you've got tractors everywhere. He's a farmer, was a farmer. He raised potatoes, so he had an affinity for tractors, of course. That's what he did. Will there still be sledding on Simplot Hill after developments? Probably. Any place there's a hill with some snow, you can find kids on it. I love when we get these text messages out of random. Just got out of the shower, trying to get ready. No rush. We'll be here tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.